Imagine life without a home or money, on the road with barely any possessions, save some basics. Well, for this week's Convets Conversation, we're meeting a man who's just walked 1,600 miles along the Pacific Coast Highway from Canada to LA in California as part of an experiment in non-ownership. Robin Greenfield spent 171 days on the road, completing 1,000 miles in homemade shoes, 600 miles barefoot, and he slept in 110 different locations, often camping under the stars. His mission? To embark on a journey of inner peace and integrity, and to work out whether he could give more to the community than he received with just the basics in a backpack to survive. Robin is an activist and social reformer. He's been called the Robin Hood of modern times by French TV and the Forrest Gump of ecology. Titles we'll explore with him later. He's written books and given TED Talks about how he's changed his life, I love this phrase, strand by strand, to live sustainably, at one with nature, and simply, so others can simply live. So let's find out more about Robin and how his journey has gone. And I'm delighted to say joins me on what looks like a very sunny morning with blue skies in Griffith Park in LA. Robin, it's so nice to meet you. How are you?
Very wonderful to be here with you, Helen, and with everybody listening.
It looks a beautiful day there. Are you living in Griffith Park at the moment?
You could say that.
Are you spending a lot of time there?
Yeah, this is my home right now. I'm a little hesitant to say it so directly because I'm trying to not have the park rangers know exactly what I'm doing. But yes, I am indeed making a home in Griffith Park right now here in the spring of Los Angeles.
Wow. Well, before we talk about your incredible journey, I gather you spent the last few weeks on a Vipassana retreat, which basically means, I think, in silent meditation. Tell me a bit about it and how that was.
Sure. So Vipassana meditation it's the direct teachings of the Buddha, actually, on how to become enlightened. Not that you can become enlightened in a 10-day silent meditation, but it teaches the practice that he taught 2,500 years ago that's been passed down. And it's through the observation of the mind, through the observation of ourselves, through the sensations on our body, and through our breath. It's a very, very basic practice, and it's an opportunity to really go deep inside of ourselves, to break through our mental programming, to reprogram our minds, to find inner peace, and so much more. And so it's a course. I did a 10-day silent meditation course, and then I did another 10 days where I actually stayed and I was of service, helping the next people who came to be able to embark on the meditation through being of service for another course.
We've had quite a few guests on our podcast, actually, who really swear by Vipassana and really enjoy it, including a wonderful British artist, Chris Levine. I'm almost a little bit nervous. I'm a chatter and I love conversation, and I'm almost a bit scared of 10 days of silence. But what do you get out of it, Robin? How does it help you, and why do you choose to go and do Vipassana?
Yes, definitely. Many people say it's the hardest thing they've ever done in their entire life. So it's not something to necessarily do lightly. It's real. It's not a vacation. It's 10 hours a day of meditation. Not that I always did 10 hours, but that's the idea. And it is a very dedicated practice. What I get out of it, my practice since the beginning of my awakening, a big part of my practice has been breaking free from the societal norms, breaking free from the delusions and the illusions, and reprogramming my mind. At the heart of every action that we take and every word we speak are first our thoughts. And so if we don't go to the depth of our thought, then we are not likely to be able to get a truly meaningful, sustainable change in our actions and our words. So our mind is very important. It's the root. So it's going to the root cause. So for me, over the years, I have issues with spending too much time on the computer, just a craving for social media or for emails. I have challenges with eating the right amounts of foods and not eating too many sweets, and with my communication and with my relationships, especially sexual relationships in the past. And so basically what Vipassana teaches us is that most of these imbalances, what I learned, are not so much the issue in themselves, but the root inside of my mind. And it teaches us that we have an addiction to craving. And then that manifests in many different ways: computer, sex, food, drugs. many different things. And so this is a purification of my mind that makes a significant impact in going out into the world more whole and complete, more balanced, and more understanding of my own psychology. I could speak on it for a very long time, and we only have a short period of time. So that's a little tidbit. And then also I will say it's 10 days of complete disconnection from the outside world. So it's a real opportunity to reset, to find more inner peace and bring that respite, that refuge that I've found, that revitalization back into the world with me, which there's a lot of chaos out there. And so getting that inner peace and bringing it back with me, it lasts for some time.
Well, it's lovely to hear. I think at some point I probably will attempt it. Let's talk about your experiment, your journey. I followed your updates on your Canada to LA journey with fascination on Instagram. Tell me a little bit about the actual experiment itself, first of all.
Sure. Well, that chapter was to walk from Canada to Los Angeles, about 1,600 miles. And it was really simple. I just wanted to take a real opportunity to slow down and to simplify. My life had gotten pretty busy over the years with managing a nonprofit and managing a team of people. And in some ways, I felt like I had lost some of the integrity that I had built up through dedication over the years and some of my deeper connection with the earth. And I feel like my integrity is one of the most valuable things that I have. And so this was just a real opportunity to move slowly, to simplify, get back to my simple roots. And walking forces you to do that. I knew I would be out on the road for many hours a day with the earth, sometimes with loud cars, but always with birds and with animals and with the ocean, with the forest and with the plants. And so it was just a real opportunity to settle into my simple, sustainable ways, walking from Canada to Los Angeles.
And you had all your worldly goods with you. Talk me through a little bit about what was in the bag that you took with you.
Yeah, so before I left, I simplified my life down to everything that I owned, being able to walk with me. And so this trip was a vessel that was designed like I was going to simplify my life down to only what I could have with me. And so the walk forced me to do that. I started out with a backpack, and then after a couple weeks, a week or so, I actually moved to having a walking cart, which is just a baby stroller that I actually got for $20 on Marketplace. And so then all my possessions were on a stroller. Now here I was, a 38-year-old man with everything I own on a stroller. And I thought to myself, wow, I never expected to be that guy walking down the highway with a baby stroller with everything I owned on it. And what I owned was just the basics, just the things that helped me to meet my basic needs and be of service. So my tent and my sleeping bag and sleeping pad for camping, a pot and a stove for cooking, food and water, my basic clothes, my homemade natural fiber clothes, my computer, and just the basic things that I needed in order to live simply, sustainably, and also be of service.
And was there a tremendous sense of enjoyment out of this simplification and being out there by the ocean and out in the wilds?
Yes, absolutely. The beginning was a struggle because I just struggled with the physical aspect of walking. It was much harder than I expected. Plus doing it on my homemade wool and leather shoes that were as close to not shoes as it gets really. And then trying to do as much barefoot as possible. It was really challenging. And I didn't do any training whatsoever. I've bicycled across the country 3 times, but I've never been on any really long walks on the road. So it was a huge challenge to start. And then also, I didn't finish all my work before I started like planned, and my Food Freedom book came out at the beginning of the walk. So I had a lot on my plate for the beginning of it, but after I got settled in, after a couple of months, I started to really tap into a level of joy and peace and presence that I wasn't able to tap into many days prior. And once I got to California, there was about a 3-week period once I reached the redwoods where I was waking up and just maintaining such a level of balanced joy and connection that it was almost a psychedelic experience of questioning, like, have I been eating mushrooms or what is going on? Just the level of connection and joy that I was feeling just through walking and through a relationship with whichever plants and animals that I came across that day, and the air and the water and the land that I was so grateful to be with.
When you mention the redwoods, do you mean the giant redwoods?
Yes. Yep. The first redwoods that I came to is just across the border from Oregon to California. It was Jedediah Redwood State Park, Jedediah Smith Redwood State Park, and a crystal clear river flows through there. And I just bathed in that river for multiple days and sat under the trees. And although I was working, I had my computer with me and I was making videos and writing. That was a monumental arrival for me because the trees slowed me down. They said, Robin, you can't be moving so fast. And I added a month to my trip, really at the beckoning and at the inspiration of those redwoods. And I started to really deeply hug those redwoods, unlike really any tree hugging I had ever done before, and really experienced what I would call a feeling of universal love. I felt a feeling of love for those trees like I had felt for humans in the past. So walking really did something for me. It really did.
We spent as a family a very short time with the giant redwoods near San Francisco, and I'll never forget that, Robin. I wish we'd budgeted a bit more time in our stay to spend some proper time, but they are absolutely breathtaking. And for me, it just made me realize what a tiny little speck we are on the planet when you lie on the ground and you look up at these magnificent trees. They're absolutely beautiful, aren't they?
Yes, and every tree has the ability to do that for us humans. Redwoods just have a special gift in being so awe-inspiring that they help us tap into that. But we can tap into that with every tree and every plant. Everyone has the ability to bring us into that deep love for the earth. And yeah, I'm feeling that right now just talking about the plants. And right now I'm surrounded by the spring of Los Angeles. The rain has arrived here. And so I'm looking around and I'm seeing a dozen different species of plants that I'm feeling so much love and connection for.
And of course, often you were able to have a morning swim in the Pacific. That must have been a wonderful treat too.
Yeah, so I rarely ever take a shower. Actually, one of my first campaigns that I ever became known for was a year without showering. I wrote this article back in 2014 called Lessons Learned from a Year Without Showering. And I do take showers now sometimes, but for the most part, I swim. I swim in the ocean, in the lakes, in the rivers, in the creek, in the streams, sometimes in the puddles, whatever body of water that I can swim in. It's my purification. Even if the water is not that pure, for me, it's purifying and it's deeply rejuvenating. And so on this trip, I very much deepened my relationship with the Pacific Ocean, having swam in so many little nooks and crannies of this ocean.
The redwoods in the Pacific are clearly among highlights of your journey. Are there any other real highlights that stand out, Robin?
Well, I'll just share the first thing that comes to mind, which is not what you would expect, but it's actually the interactions that I had with hundreds of animals that were killed by cars along the roadside. Over the last years, I've made it an intention to remove the animals from the road and give them a more dignified death by putting them onto a patch of earth where their body, as it leaks out, can return to the earth and nourish the soil rather than just sitting on the road being run over and over. And so a lot of people, when they imagine animals that are hit by cars, they're imagining really sort of gory scenes, but often they just look like sleeping animals on the side of the road. So I interacted with, of course, deer and raccoons and possums, but also fox and coyotes and porcupine and little tiny hummingbirds and owls and hawks and rabbits and squirrels, so many different creatures and skunks. And just to be able to look at them like really in the eye and just see them in a way you don't get to see wild animals because they usually move away from us, but to really be able to inspect their talons and their teeth and look into their eyes and really feel the bushiness of their tail. And a lot of people would find that to be absurd. But when you slow down you start to really get to see the animals versus when you're going at 60 miles per hour. But when you slow down, I was able to really have a meaningful connection with them.
Do you think in a way, Robin, in this full-on chaotic life we all lead and social media and demands on our time, has there been a bit of a disconnection, do you think, with nature a lot of the time?
Well, one of the reasons that I feel it's so important to talk about what we're talking about right now is I do think that a disconnection with nature is actually at the core of our destruction of the earth. The exploitation and the extraction, I think, really can only happen if we have a disconnection. And our current society is so based on consumer convenience in a way where we've been disconnected from the source of almost everything. We just buy it, often with the click of a button online or a quick trip to the store. And we don't know where the materials came from, how they got to us, the impact that they had on the earth, on other human beings, and on the plants and animals that we share this home with. So for me to simply grow my own food, to forage, to have a relationship with the water, with the plants, with the animals, this is my way of taking back power from these mega corporations that have taken it away from us. Through my simple daily actions, I am able to reconnect with the earth, gain that power back, and help others to do this as well. And I believe that it's this disconnection that creates this separation. When we have separation, that's what allows us to exploit, whether it's other human beings on the other side of the world or the people right in our own communities or the plants and animals. So I think deepening our connection with the earth is at the core of a sustainable future for humanity. And if we don't overcome that disconnection and separation, I don't think we have any real shot at coming out of the great crisis that we're in right now.
And in a way, is this why you took on that challenge? Because whilst I'm sure you're perhaps not expecting everybody is able to do what you've just done, doing it in quite an extreme fashion like you did, it gets media, it gets attention, it gets people interested, and it allows a platform to talk about this kind of thing, doesn't it? And to perhaps allow us all to make changes in our life, to simplify things that would perhaps longer term benefit the fellow human beings we live with and also the planet itself.
Yes, absolutely. So my life it's a melding of a couple of things at once. So first of all, I do everything I do because of the love of it. I don't do things because I have to or I should or of a responsibility. I do it because I love the earth and I love people and I love the plants and animals. And I want to live that love through my actions. This long walk was a way of me living that love. I called it a walk of gratitude. It was just a way of me being in gratitude for everything through my actions. And so that's the first part. And then the second part is I genuinely want to create opportunities for people to see that another way is possible. A lot of people really don't know that another way is possible because the corporations and different government agendas have been very successful at showing one or just a few ways of doing things, and even saying that any other way is crazy or is even harmful or bad. And then there's other people who know that they've seen another way as possible, but it's very hard because you need more examples and you need community around you often. It's really challenging to break free from the societal norms and the societal structures. So my job is to show people the joy and the love in this connection and that another way is possible. And so I do go to an extreme because we live in a society of extreme. And so sometimes really to get my message out there, I'm competing with that. But also the other reason why is because the truth is that the way that we're living is extreme. So the United States has 5% of the world's population, but we consume 25% of the world's resources. That by definition is extreme. And although many countries in Europe are less destructive per capita, it's in the same realm for Western European countries. So we are living such an extreme life that has been proclaimed as normal and even the progressive way forward. So I go to the other end of the extreme to really be able to create this other end of the pendulum and say, actually, our lives that we call normal, Well, they're actually incredibly extreme.
At the heart of this quest, Robin, was a question you posed to yourself. Could you give more to the community than you received? What was the idea of that question, and what's the answer?
Sure. Well, so that really ties into the second chapter. So there was the walk from Canada to Los Angeles, which I arrived January 26th, which was about 7 weeks ago. And then once I arrived here, I gave away everything that I had on that cart and the cart, down to the clothes on my back and my computer. So I sat here in Griffith Park, just a few steps from where I'm sitting right now. And I sat there covered with a palm leaf, which I didn't know, and that was just a leaf from the earth. And I entered into this experiment of non-ownership. So for 3 months, I am owning absolutely nothing to the best of my ability. And so the idea is, can I, while owning nothing and having no money, I gave away all the money that I had, contribute more to society than I give? So this is extreme. This is really one of those experiments that's, one, I'm doing it because I want to. I want to exist outside of the concept of ownership. I want to exist and test out simple living to an incredible extreme that few human beings in modern time have ever gone to, really, intentionally, purposefully with this exploration. And then at the same time, see, can I give more than I receive against all of the societal beliefs that you need money in order to be a contributing member of society, that you need a whole lot of material possessions to be a contributing member of society? Can I be a contributing member of society while owning nothing and having no money? And I think the answer is very much yes. It takes dedication, it takes skills, it takes perseverance, it takes communication skills. For me, that's compassionate communication that I practice. So it takes a lot of inner strength. And that's what I've been developing over the last couple of decades, and that's what I'm putting to use. And I would say, yeah, I really genuinely do believe that I'm contributing more than I give through my skills, through my dedication, not through sitting around, but by finding alternatives that are far outside of the societal norm.
You've been called the Robin Hood of modern times by French TV, the Forrest Gump of ecology. What do you make of those titles, and do they feel a true reflection at what's at the heart of your activism and desire for social reform?
Well, I quite like those titles, to be honest.
I do too.
I am someone who works very hard to remove labels from my mind, but those are a couple of labels that I have gravitated towards that I have actually, of course, placed on my website. The Robin Hood of modern times, I don't believe that I live up to that as well as I could. The concept of stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, I don't steal. Instead, I go into the minds of the rich. I get them to question their existence, and I get them to think, is this money making me happier, or would I actually be happier by redistributing this wealth to people who have less? So it's definitely a different form of Robin Hood, but it's every resource that I can get my hand on, distributing that more equitably to the people, to the planet, and to the plants and animals that we share this home with. So, I have made a lifetime commitment to earn less than the federal poverty threshold and donate 100% of my media earnings from books, TV shows, etc., to nonprofits. So I've embodied the Robin Hood in myself, first and foremost. But then secondly, I talk to people and I talk about how we can redistribute wealth and resources. As far as the Forrest Gump of ecology, I guess if I think about it, what I love about Forrest Gump is he really took things to the extreme in some ways. Of course, running across the country for a couple of years is extreme. He wasn't necessarily trying to, so I will never live up to the standards of Forrest Gump because Forrest Gump was so legit. He didn't try. I'm actually really having to do a lot in order to be Forrest Gump. He just was Forrest Gump. But I guess for me, the Forrest Gump of ecology it's that I really put myself in this place of putting myself out there where human beings see this inspiring story of real dedication and of real perseverance. And for me, this title was of ecology. For me, it's of the earth. That's what I want to do. I want to use my whole life to be of service to the earth to the best of my ability.
When was the turning point in your life, Robin, when you realised the life you were living wasn't in line with your beliefs or how you wanted it to be? I think you used the phrase awakening, which I think happened in 2011. Can you give us a sense of perhaps what you were doing before and what was the tipping point, I suppose?
Sure. In 2011, I was living a fairly typical US American lifestyle. I was very focused on material possessions. I had a new car. I was renting a 3-bedroom apartment, which all the bedrooms were full of stuff and the closets and the kitchen. So I was very focused on material possessions. I had a goal of being a millionaire by the time I was 30. And I was actually on that path at the age of about 25. I had started a small marketing company and was earning more than 6 figures within a couple years of having started it. And so I was on that path of being a millionaire by the time I turned 30. I was happy, I was healthy, I was traveling the world, which was one of my big aspirations. I had friends, I had romance, I was growing, I was learning, I was really in a solid place. And then what happened is that I learned that my life was a hypocrisy, that through my daily actions, the food I was eating, the car I was driving, the gas I was pumping into the car, the cheap stuff I was buying, the money that I was spending, my bank account, my investments, even the water I was drinking, it was all causing destruction. It was all parts of systems of exploitation and oppression. I was a part of the military. I was a part of the imprisonment of 2 million Black men through the prison industrial complex. I was a part of exploitation of people around the world through cheap labor. I was a part of all of this. And so I just said, I don't want to do that with my life. I want to live a life of, at best, harmony, but at least neutrality, where I'm getting my happiness not at the expense of others. And so I really learned that the way that we get our consumer convenience is at the expense and the burden of others. So I decided to step outside of that. And so a lot of people think, wow, for such a radical 180 or transformation, there must have been a major moment of enlightenment or an aha moment, a near-death experience or a death in the family. But I had nothing like that. I simply was watching documentaries and reading books, and I just learned that, again, my life was a lie. It was a delusion. It was a house of cards, and so was our societal norms and structures. And so I just set out to transform my life one step at a time. I made a list of over 100 changes that I wanted to make, and I hung that up in my kitchen with the goal of checking off one change per week. And so step by step, I was unraveling the web of consumerism that I had built myself into, strand by strand, breaking free and raveling a new web of connection, of community, of relationships with the earth, with plants and animals, and with my fellow humanity.
I like that phrase, strand by strand. You made those changes strand by strand. Can you remember when you wrote that list of around 100 things, what were perhaps some of the first things that you did?
Sure. And I will say, for those that are really interested, if you go to robingreenfield.org/100, that lists those 100 changes that you can use as a resource guide for your own journey. And then at robingreenfield.org/timeline, that actually documents the first 5 years of changes, both small and big, and just the transformation of my life. And I did that so people would have a real life example of a transformation from the mundane to dedicating a life to another way. So some of those small changes included food was a big start for me. So buying, instead of packaged foods, going to the bulk section of the food co-op and filling up my own containers of the bulk foods, grains and seeds, herbs and spices, my olive oil, all sorts of things like that. So less processed foods and instead whole foods, starting to cook my food rather than eat out and eating more fruits and vegetables, sourcing local foods rather than foods that's been shipped around the world. Then riding my bike more and driving the car less. Instead of going to the big box stores, the big consumer stores, starting to support local businesses. Looking in my trash can at all the trash that I was creating and finding alternatives that didn't create trash. So using a reusable water bottle, or instead of disposable paper towels, just using reusable washcloths and wash rags, starting to compost everything that I could, from my food scraps to the leaves from the yard to the paper and cardboard, composting everything that I could and reducing my garbage and my recycling as much as possible. So I look at food, water, energy, waste, and transportation. Those were 5 of my key pillars. So starting to exercise naturally outdoors rather than having a membership to the gym, downsizing my material possessions, just cutting my possessions way down, starting to wear natural fiber clothes rather than synthetics, taking my money out of the big banks and out of investments and investing in my now, in the now for humanity rather than my uncertain future. So I could go on, but those are a handful of them. And I will also say, getting rid of all the chemical cleaning products and finding biodegradable natural alternatives and getting rid of all of the chemicals I was putting on my body through my deodorant and my shampoo and my face wash and body wash. And for the most part, just realizing my body is complete just the way it is. I don't need all of these things. And for the few things that I did need, finding natural alternatives, natural enough that I would even be able to put it into my body. That's just coconut oil rather than this concoction of petrochemicals used to make a body lotion. So, man, I got a little inspired there and a little revved up thinking about all these positive changes. But these, for me, are the core of taking our life back and being the change we wish to see in the world.
So when you did your food experiment, did you grow your own and forage everything for that year? And is that the basis of the Food Freedom book that came out at the beginning of your walk?
Yes. So that for me was an experiment to see. I learned that our global industrial food system is at the heart of destruction on a daily basis for most every one of us human beings. And it's one of the key ways that we can take our power back and live in harmony. Because I learned that with every bite that I was taking a bite out of the planet. I wanted to see with every bite that I was taking, could I actually be contributing to the planet? Could I break free from this incredibly destructive system? And so that's what I set out to do. This was in 2018. So it's been a little while now. And I set out to grow and forage 100% of my food, down to the salt, the oil, the spices, the calories, the fat, the vitamins. There would be no multivitamins, no supplements, no medicines from the store. Everything that I consumed for the entire year, I would grow or forage. And I set out to do that. I gave myself 6 months of preparation to go from having nothing, no garden, starting on blank lawns to 100%. That 6 months turned into 10 months. So I gave myself more preparation than I planned. And I did just that. I spent an entire year doing that. I grew 100 different foods in my garden and I foraged 200 different foods from nature. And it was a beautiful year. It was a very challenging year. But since then, everywhere I go, food and medicine is growing freely and abundantly all around me. Since then, I've been traveling a lot for the last 5 years, so I haven't really had my own garden, but nature is my garden. Right now, sitting here in this park, I'm looking at mustard and chickweed and a mint. I'm looking at the California bay tree. That's just what I glanced at, just looking up from the computer. So now I harvest my food and medicine everywhere. There's 20 different foods that I harvested just over the last few weeks around Southern California. And so, yes. And then lastly, yes, I wrote a book on that, Food Freedom. It is a dissection of the truth behind our global industrial food system. It is a story of my year of food empowerment. And it is a manual for how you too can break free from the system, whether it's just a little bit or it's your entire life. It gives lots of examples. It's a really valuable resource. And speaking of valuable, it is available in the gift economy. So it's available on a donation basis. So you can receive it for free, even the paperback. And the ebook you can download for free and you can make a donation if you want to or not. Your donation can be monetary, or it can be that you use what you learn to be of service. And then the last thing I'll share is that 100% of the profits from it go into giving the book away and donating the food to food sovereignty initiatives. So the book in itself, to the best of my ability, is the solution in every way that I can fathom up.
Which partly answers my next question. I like the phrase you use, living simply so others can simply live. Expound, Robin. What exactly do you mean by that? Because I think you've just given one example there.
Sure. Well, that's actually a quote from Mahatma Gandhi, who is the most influential person in my life. I have many, many influences, but he has been the most profound influence in my life. And so today, we touched on this earlier. Today in our modern times, especially even more than Gandhi's times, it's so important. So we live in a time where we have an extreme amount of consumer convenience, where we don't live simply. We don't live simply at all. Behind every action is an incredible complexity. Food, water, energy, waste, transportation, money. There's so much complexity behind everything we do. And when you look deeper, you realize behind every single thing we do, there is somebody suffering, or there are plants and animals that are suffering. The burden is placed elsewhere. So voluntary simplicity is the concept of living simply so that others are not being exploited, so that a burden is not being placed on others, so that others can simply live. Because when you look more closely, there's so much violence behind our actions and our systems. So some people look at living simply and they just don't understand it. They see, how can that be the solution in these complex times? How can it be simple living? We need complex technological solutions. But the truth is that simple living is one of the most profound solutions to the issues that we live in. And for anybody that doubts that, well, I would just say, do more looking into it before doubting it. Look into the people who profess simple living and look into our actions, start to understand the complexities of our lives. And one book that I recommend for that is by Mark Boyle. He lived without money for 3 years. He was also a big influence on my life. And he wrote a book called Drinking Molotov Cocktails with Gandhi that really questions what is nonviolence. And it's an interesting title that could put some people off. But if you want to really understand the truth behind our actions, that's a very interesting book to read.
I'll certainly get that one. Just looking at some stats, 1% of the human population has more financial wealth than 50% of the entire human population combined. And I suppose wealth inequality, as we're seeing right now, is only increasing. Yet what troubles me is we have millions of people around the world without the basics like clean water and food. And yet there's all this wealth and all these powerful billionaires, and yet we never seem to really tackle any of that.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people that are really working on that. And there are a lot of financially wealthy people who really are waking up and are redistributing resources. Land Back is a movement to give land back to Indigenous people. That's landback.org. Leah Penniman, she started a farm called Soulfire Farm. And there's the Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust, which works to give farmland back to Black farmers, which were really the founders of this nation to a large degree, and who lost their land through slavery and through exploitation. And there's people who are saying, hey, you know what? I actually don't want to hold on to all this wealth and these resources, and I want to distribute that. So there's a lot of people that are really working on that, and there's a lot of progress that is being made. And I'll say that, yes, wealth inequality is actually increasing at this moment. So you could say that progress is not being made, and that would be reasonable to say. However, we as individuals, we have the option to take responsibility for our own actions and see how we either contribute to the problem or the solution. And that's what I focus on. So my simple message is, question your lives. Ask yourself, am I living the life that I truly want? Are my actions really in alignment with my beliefs? How are my actions affecting the earth, my fellow humanity, and the plants and animals that I share this home with? And if you don't like the answers, then change them. It's up to you. You don't have the weight of the world on your shoulders. I don't believe that any of us have a responsibility to save the world. I think we do have a responsibility for our own actions, though. And I think that's a beautiful, profound place to start. If we want to. Nobody has to do anything. I want to do this from a place of love and joy and connection. And you know what? I think just about anybody who has these resources finds that by distributing them equitably, they end up being the greatest winners because there's so much more connection and meaning and purpose in the sharing than there is in this hoarding. So it's really a win-win situation for people that come into this place.
The actor Heath Ledger said once that everyone you meet always asks if you have a career, are you married, do you own a house, as if life was some kind of grocery list. But nobody ever asks if you're happy. You were on that trajectory. You dreamt perhaps of being very successful if you measure success in financial gain. But what comes through chatting to you is this journey you're on now seems to bring you much more happiness than the trajectory that you were on earlier on in your life. Am I right in thinking that?
Yes. So I experience a range of emotions. I experience sometimes a little depression and sadness. I can experience anxiety, frustration, overwhelm. There's many feelings that I have, but happiness is much stronger than any of the ones that I just mentioned. Joy is much stronger than any of the ones that I just mentioned. And that's not an accident. It's because I've designed my life around it. I have said in my mission to be of service, I have said, I'm not going to give up happiness. I'm just not willing to get my happiness at other people's expense. Happiness is at the core of my mission. And I think it's really important. I think happiness naturally arises when we remove the barriers and when we remove the disconnection and separation. I think naturally happiness arises. And I have an incredible amount of happiness within me.
And did you achieve the inner peace and the integrity that you set out to try and do when you headed off from Canada?
I've made a lot of progress. Absolutely. I've been experiencing an inner state that is new to me in the sense of being able to look out in the ocean and just feel such a strong love, or hug a tree and feel such a strong love like never before. And to have many, many moments of just deep inner peace, of wholeness and completeness, and being able to really say, I don't need these consumer goods to be whole and complete. I love myself just the way I am. Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, really inspired me. He said, I like you just the way you are. And I turned that into something that I say to myself most days. I love myself just the way that I am. And I love others just the way they are. And the only way that I can love others just the way that they are, I believe, is because I truly love myself. So yes, there is still much more work to do, but the diligence and the dedication and the persistence has definitely paid off in my inner landscape of peace and happiness and harmony within.
So what's next, Robin?
Well, I'm in this experiment of non-ownership still for another 5 weeks. So I'm here in Los Angeles and in Griffith Park. If anybody is in the area, they can come and meet me here on the webpage, robingreenfield.org/non-ownership. You can find the schedule of events that I have here. I'm going to have a barefoot school and a foraging school and a simple and sustainable living school. So you can come learn here and grow your community. I'm almost positive that my next big adventure is going to start later this year, and I am going to forage 100% of my food. So I grew and foraged 100% of my food, which, included gardens, which now I'm talking about only harvesting my food from the wild, foraging 100% of my food. And I think that is an opportunity to deeply, deeply come home to earth and deeply, deeply connect with the plants and animals that we share this space with. So it's not certain, but that's very much a big part of the plan. And then also to really launch into my desire to plant thousands and thousands of community fruit and nut trees, creating a system to be able to plant from seed and from cutting hundreds of thousands of fruit and nut trees in communities around the country and make it a community program that empowers people to do that. And so that would be probably, I'm very much considering doing this in my homeland of northern Wisconsin and spending some real deep time with the woods up there and the waters up there. So it's not definitive, but it's a strong enough feeling that I'm happy to talk about it in this moment.
I wish there weren't thousands of miles between us, because I'd like to come to some of those sessions in Griffith Park and also to meet you in real life. Hopefully we will at some point. It's been really inspirational listening to you today. You've given us some interesting reading material, and I think it's nice sometimes to just suddenly stop and actually examine where we are in life. And even if it's little small changes we can make and new habits, I think it's quite an exciting journey. And it's great to talk to you about how you've done it and how you've got your message out there. And boy, you've got a great smile too, Robin.
Well, thank you very much, Helen. It's been nice to chat with you. And I want to thank you for the gift, because this conversation has really re-inspired and reinvigorated me. I've been doing some work to forget who I am through this experiment of non-ownership, of dissolving the self and dissolving the ego. And we've just talked so much about my passion here that you've really reinvigorated my passion. So thank you for this gift today.
Well, you are very welcome. You've been listening to activist and social reformer Robin Greenfield sharing his 1,600-mile journey from Canada to LA, a journey of inner peace and integrity, and also talking about the experiment that he's doing right now in non-ownership, as well as lots of other things too. If you feel inspired by Robin's story, then do follow him on Instagram at robin.greenfield. And there've been lots of references there to his website, so plenty of material there if you want to find out more. Don't forget to download and subscribe to our series at convex.podbean.com, or search The Convex Conversation on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'll be back next week with another great guest, probably closer to home, so join me then.